So yeah, I'm Hanne van der Iest, and I work here. I'll start by introducing myself. I work here in the sociology department at the University of South Carolina. Um, for my day-to-day teaching, I primarily teach Sociology 101 online. It's an introductory course, one of the Carolina core courses. So I tend to have fairly big classrooms, about 250 students per semester at least, and it depends a bit. Sometimes I teach an extra section. I have taught face-to-face here, but right now all my teaching is online. And that does not mean that what I'm going to say here is only applicable to online teaching. To the contrary, I think like every course can benefit from a good communication plan, solid communication, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. Just a little bit about my course, maybe to contextualize. It's, like I said, it's an online course. I tried to structure it clearly, but this is something that we'll talk about later, so I'll keep that to a minimum. In terms of like the materials I assign, I have a lot of multimedia in the course, so you know your readings obviously, but lots of podcasts and videos, and I've also made a whole lot of lecture videos myself. I try to keep them very short, so 5 to 10 minutes or so that students are not losing interest straight away. And we've also, with our department, we've worked together on a faculty interview project. So our students get to see several of our faculty members throughout the course of the semester. Again, short, like interviews, about 8 minutes, 10 minutes or something like that. And this is something that, you know, if you have time left in the end and you want to learn more about, I'm happy to speak to that more, but it won't be the focus of what I'll be talking about today. Other things that I do is I am the program coordinator for our online summer minor. In arts and sciences, there's now, partially because of Lydia Frass and Christy Friend's efforts, there's a lot more online teaching on the way, high quality online teaching. And our department is hoping to contribute to that. We have an accelerated online summer minor, and we got funding from the McCausland funds from the college to set up several of our courses in our program. I've been involved in setting up a lot of these courses, formatting a lot of these courses. So some of the communication strategies that I'll be talking about today, they've sort of been implemented wholesale in this package of courses that we've been developing for our online minors as well. So I'm talking a lot about online, and I think like maybe that's a good seg into what I want to be talking about today. Actually, at the college level, we have quite a good process approval of new online courses. It's quite, you have to have like a really good syllabus in which you outline lots of details about your course design, regular assessments, what have you. But one thing that we talk about less often, but that might be equally important, is communication plans, right? And this is especially important in online teaching, given that your communication might not be as obvious as in a face-to-face class, right? So you need to have a really solid plan as to how you're going to tackle that. But I think that every class, whether it's an online class or a face-to-face class, stands to benefit from like a well-structured, well-thought-through approach to communication with students. I think good communication has the potential to make everybody's life easier, create happier students, if you have more clarity, that's only going to benefit their learning outcomes. It's also going to benefit you as an instructor in a number of different ways. A crass way, like the crassest way of thinking about it is, at minimum, it will likely benefit your course teaching evaluations. But more importantly is like you're going to be better able to communicate your learning objectives to your students, and you're going to have a lot more positive interaction with students, right? So a lot of the negative interaction that we occasionally get from students, which can be, because they're stressed, because they're not getting something, because work is heaping up, a lot of that can be proactively prevented. And we're going to talk about a whole lot of different ways in which we can do that. Some of them very structural, some of them kind of nitty gritty, like fun things that you can add into your communication to add a good vibe. And yeah, we'll be going over that. So interestingly, when we're talking about course communication, often we're thinking about, well, what happens during the semester, right? What do we do from week to week? But that is not where communication begins. Communication begins in the design phase of the course. There's a whole bunch of structural features that you can incorporate in your course where the communication is set up in advance. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can just basically pre-design your communication into your course from the get-go, before the semester even starts. So I'm going to talk through my course, and we're going to use my Sociology 101 course as an example of like how different ways in which you can do that. And then we are going to move on to what we often think more about as like a traditional communication plan, like what is our week-to-week communication with the students, you know, what announcement schedules we can talk about, outreach to students, you know, both students who are underperforming, missing assignments, but also to students who are doing very well, who go above and beyond, and who really are the actors that make sure that the class becomes a stimulating learning environment for all the other students as well. So we'll talk about that. I want to just, you know, preempt all of this by saying that I think communication, just like to like paint with a very broad paintbrush, it always benefits from having a warm, non-judgmental tone. I think you cannot go wrong with that. Even when students do something bad, right? Like even when students cheat or something like that, right? It's still always, in my opinion, it's good to err on the side of being non-judgmental, of thinking about, you know, the circumstances that these students might have found them in and all of that. I also think that good communication, like always, will rest on consistent layouts, on perhaps a somewhat formulaic approach, especially like recurring announcements and stuff like that, you know, that they stick to somewhat of a template so that students don't get lost in the nitty-gritty. We're also gonna, I think, like good communication can also rest on very good text and graphic design. So we're gonna see some examples of what we can do in Blackboard Ultra to make sure that our communications are fun and short and sweet. And good communication, in my mind, preempts questions that students may have. So ideally, communication answers students' questions before they even have to ask them. Right now, we all find ourselves in my Blackboard sandbox for Sociology 101. And the first thing that I'm going to do is just scroll through it so you can kind of see what's in here. So as you can see, we have a Sociology Cafe at the top, a wall of fame. I will talk about that more later. We have a Start Here folder, which is where students are directed when you start the course, resources for students, some resources for me, but that's not visible to students. And then we have these modules, right? And, you know, it's pretty standard in full semester length online courses. I have 14 modules in my course. Okay, now, the first thing I want to highlight is the structure of the course. Like I said, there's 14 modules. And again, I think that is pretty common in online courses. But, you know, I think face-to-face courses also benefit from, you know, a clear structural approach. In my course, in a regular semester, we do one module per week. In a summer semester, we do roughly one module per day. And I think what is very important for, you know, clarity and communication is that there is a repetitive folder structure. So I'm going to open a few so you can see. Each of my folders contains this first information: a Read Me First document, readings and materials, lecture videos, assignments. I'm going to pull open a few more so you can see. Same thing, Read Me First, readings, materials, lecture videos, assignments. It's the same everywhere. And that makes it that students can very easily find what they're looking for. What that means for me as an instructor is that I don't have to spend time explaining students where they can find things beyond the first 1 or 2 modules, if that. So it helps me, it helps them, and we're all happier for it. Another thing that I have in my course, which you know, benefits clarity, is a repeating assignment structure. Again, this is an online course, but actually also the face-to-face courses that I used to like most as a student, they did not have like a traditional midterm final assessment structure. No, they had a repeating assessment structure where you were assessed on something at least every week. It made sure you were engaged. It made sure, like for me, you know, it felt like my work was seen, everything I did counted. And so that is what we've chosen to do in my 101 course as well. So in every assignment folder, there is going to be the exact same 3 assessments: a class participation assignment, a homework, and a quiz. And this is the same for every single module. So I'll pull open another one so you can see. Let's do this one here. Or Yeah, let's do it. We have sometimes optional practice questions, but they're formative, they don't count. So again, a class participation assignment, a homework, and a quiz. There's going to be the same number of questions and quiz, and the class participation assignment. The content varies a little bit, but in terms of time investments, they're incredibly comparable to one another. So again, what this means is that there's a steady workload on students, right? Which tends to reduce their stress. They know what they're getting, they know what they need to do in order to like be successful in the course. And yeah, that is why it's structured and set up the way it is. Okay, now I'll just like highlight a couple of hacks here, simple ones. You've probably seen that there's these little pictures on the sides. You know, this really helps out with just like adding visual interest to the course and also communicating course information, right? So I think that whenever there's an opportunity to zhuzh up your course a little bit, students are going to appreciate it. This is something you can do. In addition, images give you the option of creating more structure in the course. So for instance, we have this particular image here, but all my video lectures in this module 6 are also headed with this image. That makes it so that each unit, each module has a coherent design. And again, this increases clarity for students. Another like feature of the site is that I've tried to, I'll give you like one example of how I've tried to preempt a recurring question. So a lot of students towards the second half of the semester, even though this is in the syllabus and in the Start Here folder and all of that, start asking me, do we have a final exam? You know, students read 4, 5, 6 syllabi a semester. They do it in the beginning. They get very busy. Obviously, they're not going to remember the thing verbatim. So, you know, to preempt that question, what I did is create a document, super simple. It's a super simple example, saying, congratulations, you've completed Sociology 101. We have no final exam in this course. Since incorporating this document in the course design, I've never gotten this question again. So it saves me time, and students are happy because they have their answer immediately. They don't even need to go to me. It's right there where they need to see it. Okay, so this is the overview page. Now I wanted to take you through some of the folders here. And again, we're talking about communication and course design. So I'm not going to open every single document in here, but I wanted to give you a couple of examples of what you can do with design in Blackboard. So let's see, what are we going to look at now? Over here in the Start Here folder, this is where students are directed when they're just starting the course, the syllabus, a course schedule, and some other resources. Right now I'm going to take you to the, like, what shall we do? Start Here section. Let's open it up. This is a fairly standard Start Here section, but this is not necessarily the font type that you see when you just enter a document without providing any alterations. So I've opted for a couple of different things. The first thing I wanted to tell you about is actually Blackboard Ultra allows you to use emojis, just copy them from the web and copy them right into your document. And they can add a lot of fun and visual interest to your documents. We all know what it's like to stare at like a screen full of letters. It can be kind of overwhelming. And so you can use emojis, such as, for instance, you know, the emojis I've included here on the side, to structure your document and make it very easy for students to find the information that they are looking for. So here's some examples of emojis. Now you need to tweak a little bit what you do. Like if you copy these online, you post them right here, they show up kind of small. So you might need to adapt the font size to the largest font size for the emoji to show up large, but this is available to you. And I have some other examples that I'm going to show you throughout. Another thing that you will see is that what I'm trying to do is keep the text blocks in here with these dividing lines quite small, right? So text underneath a header, it's never going to be super long. I'm trying to keep these blocks as small as possible to avoid information overwhelm. So that is what you can see over here. I have also opted to work with a larger font type than the standard font type that is used in Blackboard. I want to say that it starts at font type 14 and I've chosen to do a font type 18. for accessibility, but even for us folks that don't have any temporary or chronic disabilities to do with information processing, I find that the larger font type generally processes easier. We all know what it was like to go to the library, find one of our favorite books, and like have it written in these tiny little letters, and like feeling a little bit turned off by it, right? If you have a larger font type, things just feel easier and more welcoming to you. So that is another hack that you can incorporate just off the bat to make things easier. And you can include pictures as well, as I've done. I've included a banner up here. So just wanted to show you that as an example of what you can do to increase the clarity of your documents in Blackboard. Okay, we're going to click out of here. I wanted to show you one more thing because we're going to get back to this soon. Just quickly pull up the course schedule. You'll see here again, a larger font type, and I have made use of emojis here with every single module. You will see these emojis, these same emojis turn or come back in the announcements for each module. Each module has a particular emoji attached to it. You are going to keep that stable throughout the rest of the semester to increase the clarity of our communication. So again, very quickly go through here. As you can see, I'll just pause right here, is in terms of clarity, I've done my very best to communicate very clearly in advance exactly what it is that we're going to cover, both in terms of materials, the lecture videos, and the assignments, but also to include an estimate of the study time that students will spend on each individual material or lecture or assignment. Now, obviously, students, will have various paces of studying, but I find that giving them an estimate of how long things will take helps students to block off time in their calendar. There's loads of online calculators available that allow you to estimate how long something will take to read. Over here, I've used a Rice University calculator for that, and I have assumed, about 1.7 times the regular runtime of a video for total study time for a video. So that's what you're seeing here. Okay, I'm going to click out of this. Okay, right now I'm going to close the Start Here folder and go to one of the module folders. Maybe this one over here, module 3. Okay, you already saw this folder structure that's going to repeat. I wanted to take you into a README first document over here, just to show you what's in there. So every time that students start a module, they will get a document that looks exactly like this. They get a tiny introduction into the topic, or at least some kind of welcome over here. We have something to add a little bit of a berry and visual interest. The learning objectives are detailed, and we have an emoji parsing that out. Then we clearly communicate the assignment due dates over here with another emoji. And then over here, we have that estimated study time again that you just saw in the course schedule. So I don't want to assume that students are always going to go back to the course schedule to see how long things take. To reduce the number of times that they need to click back and forth, I've reiterated that information here, so to have it readily accessible whenever they need it. Below here, by the way, some extra information on how these learning minutes were calculated. And I always wish them good luck with their studies in module. So yeah, I just wanted to show you this as it's like a good example of like what you can do, when you have students come into a module and how that can look. Okay, now quickly, one other feature that I have is a study guide. Over here, a study guide, I'll show you. We have a couple of different pieces of materials over here that I'm assigning. And so I always give students access to a little study guide. I don't like to give students the answers in a study guide, so I don't like to hand out definitions, but I do like to give them some guidance on what it is they need to take from a particular piece of material after reading it or after watching it. So I will tell them, what they need to take away from it. For instance, in this podcast, they might need to know what kind of research methods were used in this podcast, for instance. Okay, these study guides, maybe these different emojis seem kind of overwhelming now, but there's the same emojis for a study guide all the time, right? So again, this is just to create this repeating structure again and to add the visual interest. Okay, so let's see, one other, hack to include in terms of like accessibility and clarity is I like to include or I like to make sure that any reading or material I assign is accessible. We're obviously, by law required to do so. And one way of doing that with your readings that makes life easier on you is to do it through the library. Make your readings available through e-reserves because they will check the accessibility of the documents for you. This also makes it so that students who are even more typical learners, that they can use screen readers and stuff like that if they find that easier to process, if they find audio easier to process. So that is another thing that you can do to make sure that what you assign to students is really clear. Okay, these were sort of the features of the course design that I wanted to, or like of the visual course design that I wanted to highlight. But another thing I think like that is very valuable for your communication is to gather feedback from students. I think Vera is here. I know the College of Nursing is incredibly good at like eliciting feedback from students in every single one of their online courses. I try to do the same. So at 2 different spots in the course, in Module 4 and Module 8, prior to them needing to complete the final course evaluations, I allow students to give feedback on the course. There's some multiple choice questions, and there's like an open-ended questions in which they can share with me any suggestions or concerns that they have. Now, I think that if you include a survey, that it's incredibly important to also respond to it. Otherwise, students feel like they're talking into the void. So you can do some things if you know that there's just a couple of common things that students have trouble with. In the course, in my course, it's the quizzes. They're multiple choice. There are times students find this hard, and I often get some comments to this effect during the surveys. If you know that there are going to be these recurring comments, then what you can do is create some tips in advance that address any of the common concerns that students are likely to voice. And again, this is partially for accessibility, but also because students just generally like watching videos more than reading text. I've made these tips available both in text, like so. There's going to be a document with text. But then there's also going to be a video in which I address their issues. So they can just click right here. And I won't go through the excruciating embarrassment of like playing myself on this video right now, but they have a video that they can watch that includes the tips. So again, rather than having to, write this up over and over again to individual students, if you know that you're going to just have a few common issues that students will voice, making sure that you have tips outlined in advance in video and text can help with that and avoids that you have to do the same work over and over. For surveys, obviously you can do this general response, but there's going to be loads of students who might have, a survey response that warrants an individual reply. And I try and do that. Like I said, my course generally consists of about 250 students. I would say that every survey I reach out to somewhere between 30 to 50 students who have concerns that I think warrant an individual response. So that is something that I do as well. Okay. So we talked about, following outline again, we talked about, course design. We talked about integrating surveys in your course design and ensuring that you respond to those surveys. And then you can also include other pathways for communication into your course. In online courses, it's very important that you have a place where students can interact with one another as well. We have that in my course in the class participation assignments. Students often get an interview, a faculty interview that they need to respond to. For instance, over here, they see an interview with this faculty member right here, and then they will need to respond to a prompt on that interview and reply to one another. But then, like, what's also very important is that, if, in my case, there's like a lot of students and they have class participation assignment every week. It is important that students have the feeling that you actually read what they are writing. And so we sort of came up with, or I came up with this idea of the wall of fame, on which like the best 10 to 15% of student responses are featured to these class participation assignments. And again, this is another nexus of communication with students, because I might, have an example of a student right here. I might boldface the sentence that illustrates their points best, or is maybe like the key sentence in what they're saying. And then I have an opportunity to respond, but all students can see this response. So we do this for every single one of our modules. I'll just like scroll down. It's like actually quite a lot of text that you're getting over here. Every single module, we have like selected responses and replies to that. So I want to say like a nice course hack is to add something that features like top responses or like above and beyond contributions. It makes it so that students that actually try hard, that they feel seen. I also give them a little bit of extra credit when they make it onto the Wall of Fame. And so this just generates good buzz, right? Students are excited at getting on this Wall of Fame. They're excited when I reply to them. So yeah, it's just a nice course design feature and an informal reward system that helps the class have good vibes. Another hack there is to have some kind of badge system or honor system, or maybe like an extra credit system for when students do a really good job. We have a badge system. If students make it on a Wall of Fame, they get like a 0.5% of extra credit added to their grade. And in the grade book, we keep track of, what badges students, oh wait, badges are not in here. This is my sandbox, so it's not up to date. We keep track of their badges, but also if students like point out an issue with the course or a technical error or something like that, I might give them a badge for their contribution to the class. Okay, so that was sort of the first part of what I wanted to talk about. The other part I'll keep shorter because we're short on time. So right now we talked about course design and how you can integrate lots of communication within your course design already. And again, my communication is maybe a little bit more elaborate than a face-to-face course would need. But I think still like including these design features, including mechanisms for feedback, positive reinforcement are all very important, and making sure that you preempt these questions that students might have is very important. So course design is the start of your communication plan, right? Okay, and then in the remainder of this talk, I wanted to talk about the ongoing communication that you do on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, whatever it is. There's going to be regular communications. You're going to send out, what I always do is send out an introductory announcement every week. When we start a new module topic, you send out an introduction to that. And what I also like to do is send out a few deadline reminders, at least 2 in my case. I also send out a message for when the Wall of Fame is up. So students know to expect, on Monday, we're going to get this email, on Thursday, this email, on Friday, this email, and the Wall of Fame is a little bit up for grabs because it is 50 pages of reading for me, and it varies like how quickly I can get through it. Okay, we're going to go to the announcements right here. They're all mixed together because unfortunately, when you copy over announcement from one sandbox to another, they lose their sequence. That is unfortunate, but that is the case. As you can see up here, every announcement has like a little emoji attached to it, occasionally 2 for important announcements. And these emojis, they're not, well, I mean, like they're fun, but they're not completely willy-nilly. Anytime there's a friendly deadline reminder, I will include like this little alarm clock right here. Anytime I say anything about the Wall of Fame, I will include a little prize trophy over here. Anytime module communication comes up, I will include the emoji that belongs to that module over here. So again, it's like kind of mixed up here. The sequence of them is mixed up, but you can see what these emojis can do for the structuring of your communication. Okay, I also think that, and the nice thing, I don't know, but most of you have probably worked with Blackboard Ultra extensively. So you probably know all of this already, but one thing that I really love about Blackboard Ultra is that it carries over these announcement drafts from semester to semester. Each semester you have the opportunity of making them just a little bit better, making them just a little bit more structured, and I really appreciate that. It really allows you to, over time, to create a really solid structure of announcements. So that is another thing. Again, you probably all do this, but open an assignment, right? I actually need to click edit on this assignment to show you, right? One thing that students may not always do is open their open their Blackboard. They might open their email only. So another good tip for making sure that students actually read your announcements is always checking this send an email copy to recipients box. I didn't want to leave that out. Okay, so I have a schedule for my regular announcements. I think it's also good to have a schedule for miscellaneous announcements. So there's a couple of standard miscellaneous announcements that are going to make it into the course, like an introduction to the course, a standard announcement about my weekend email policy early on in the semester, emails about clear expectation around like assignment deadlines around spring break, fall break, Thanksgiving break, and all of that, and periodic reminders about how the final grades are calculated. Having these announcements set up in advance and having them on a schedule makes it so that you really preempt, students coming to you panic, like, oh my God, what's going to happen during break? Oh my God, what's going to happen with my final grade? You've preempted those things. You've already set up your announcements. You can send them out on schedule, and students will be a lot calmer for it and appreciative that you thought about the questions that they had in your mind. Okay, briefly, another thing that I think is important is following up with absentee students. When students miss an assignment, I will always reach out to them. I have some in the handout I attached. I have some templates for the types of communication I send out to them. It's fairly standard, but it's warm, non-judgmental. We all know there might be a million reasons why somebody misses an assignment. It can happen to the best of us. And even if they miss all the assignments up to that point, it still can mean that like lots is going on in their life. So I find there's really no need to be judgmental or stern about it. You have a syllabus policy that obviously you might be, you might not be able to give them a makeup opportunity, but there's no need to like be judgmental about it off the bat, at least. So I have some communication attached in the appendix. So see, go to my outline. And I also do in my communication plan, there's a weekly outreach to students who go above and beyond. So that's included there. I think those are the highlights of the communication plan. So I just wanted to sort of sum up what we've talked about and then talk with you and ask you for what you do. If you have any questions for me, I'm very welcome to ask me things. Just wanted to sum up. What we talked about today was a communication plan. How can you design your communication in your online course to make sure that students are happy, that things are very clear, to benefit your positive interaction with students. And we talked about two main four ways in which you can do that. One is to course design, and the other is to ongoing course communication. With course design, we talked about having a course clearly structured, having repeating assignments, repeating deadlines, being very clear about that, making sure that you use graphic design, elements of graphic design to communicate course structure in addition to text. Also making sure your text doesn't get too overwhelming, so larger font types, little pieces of text, not too overwhelming to the eyes, is something that you can do. And then for ongoing communication, we talked about an announcement schedule, how important it is to have an announcement schedule. Again, use of graphic design elements to make sure that there's clarity and structure there. And message outreach and email outreach schedule as well, in which you reach out to both students who are underperforming and also students who are performing above and beyond. Those are some of the most important elements in my communication plan, and I hope there's something that you can take away from that.